All right, hello and welcome to another Expert Insight interview. My name is John Golden from SalesPOP Online Sales Magazine and Pipeliner CRM, joining you from actually a very, very sunny San Diego today. And I'm delighted to be joined by Nathan Schiess, who is in beautiful Salt Lake City in Utah. How are you doing, Nathan?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Excellent, excellent. And Nathan is a personal branding strategist and marketing expert who helps real estate professionals build authority, create visibility, and attract aligned relationships through strategic content. You have a background in psychology, personal development, and real estate investing, and you blend deep insight with punchy storytelling to position clients as leaders in their space. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Is we're going to talk about personal branding for real estate agents. Because, I mean, let's face it, Nathan, there's a lot of real estate agents and there's a lot of people qualifying all the time and getting their license. And it seems to be like a place where a lot of people gravitate towards, or they think, this looks like a place I could make a lot of money. So, from a consumer point of view, there's an awful lot of real estate agents to choose from.
Yeah, 100%. It's like a commodity service, right?
Yes.
People think it's interchangeable. Really, it's just a matter of who do I like more is kind of how people view it. A lot of folks, at least.
Yeah. So when you work with real estate agents on their personal brand, because at the end of the day, we're not working with realities. We're not working with Remax or any of the other like companies. We're working with the individual.
Right.
So when you work with an individual, what is the first elements you talk about in terms of building their personal brand?
Yeah, great question, John. So the first thing that we have to do is we have to figure out what they want. What are they
Mhm.
trying to do? One of the things that I'm a strong believer in, and this is maybe a hot take, is that every single successful real estate agent that I know who's done very well has an additional business. Now,
Mhm.
I always suggest that it is a real estate adjacent business. And by the way, running your own brokerage would be one of those things, or a
Right.
team, right? But whether you have an inspection company or a staging company or a property management company or something, there should be something else that you do. So whenever I sit down with someone to do a personal brand, I say, okay, how many houses are you trying to sell? And so what's that? Really, I say, what's the income goal? What's your
Right.
income goal? How many houses does that mean you need to sell? Then basically I say, okay, this next goal that I want to talk about is what's your secondary business? What is the next it also factors into their value ladder of where else are you providing value.
Mhm.
To the point we were talking about earlier, you can't be a commodity.
Right.
You can't be interchangeable. You have to have some niche. You have to have some specialty. And if we can monetize that as a business, great. But we're going to talk about that early on in the conversation of your personal branding, because we're going to thread that through everything as we move forward. And then the last piece that I always ask, as far as goals are concerned, is what's your long-term wealth carrying vehicle? Real estate is a very, in my opinion, it's a great wealth carrying vehicle.
Yep.
And so for a lot of real estate agents, they want to do long-term rentals or short-term rentals or something like that. And if that's the case, then we need to start planning for that early on. And we want to figure out, is that something we're going to tie into our personal brand strategy?
Mhm. And then that's a great point. And then from the point of view of the personality and the stuff that you want to project, and that I mean, there's different types. You see people, different types of realtors, and they appeal to different people. So obviously, you want somebody to be authentic. Obviously, one of the first things you look at is who they are authentically and how that may match with the market, or a particular segment of that market.
Yeah, I'd say kind of. It can't be
Mhm.
completely divergent, right? That would
Yeah.
be that inauthenticity will
Yeah.
will be sniffed out in a moment. However, I actually believe that personal brands are not for you. They're for your ICP or your ideal
Yeah.
client profile. They're not for you. You're not post. It's not a diary. If you want a
Mhm.
diary, go to the grocery store and buy one. That's
Mhm.
not what this is. I'm also I should clarify. I'm not a lifestyle personal brand person.
Sure.
I'm not. I don't believe in that. I'm an expert personal branding person. So it's not that lifestyle brands don't work; they do. And to your point, with an authentic, the authenticity piece. If you're doing a lifestyle brand, that is the name of the game. Is just be yourself, post constantly, always putting yourself out there in all these different circumstances. But what I am more a fan of is where can you be an expert? So what I say is, okay, you want to sell. Let's say you want to make $250,000 this year. Great.
Hmm.
You can absolutely do that. How many houses do you need to sell? And it depends on the area, right? Every area you're going to, houses are different prices and commissions and stuff. So we figure out how many houses they need to sell. And they say, okay, of the houses you've sold so far, tell me about that person. What are the patterns you've noticed? How old are they? Are they men? Are they women? What do they do for work? How much do they make? We need to understand your ideal client profile, right? That's the next step after we've done your goals
Hmm.
is we say, okay, let's figure out who we're talking to. And so identifying those, and we can talk about that more if you want, but that needs to be the central focus of your brand, is what their problems, questions, roadblocks, and results. That's what you're going to talk about, because that's what they need from you.
Yeah, which is a great. I know we talk more because it is a great point. Because sometimes, like on the outside, you would sort of, if you were going into, you would think, well, my customers are going to be, well, they could just be across the board. They could be anybody, really, right? But you're saying, one of the things you need to identify early on is patterns, or maybe the type of ICP that you work best with.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And to your point, like if someone comes to you from, there are
Sure,
people across the spectrum, you'll sell their house. But the
absolutely.
deal is, like, think about this. If there's two brands and one person's like, I'm for everybody and I'm just an agent, and then someone's
Mhm.
like, I work with this person in this area doing this thing. The truth is, the more specific you are, the more noticeable you are. And so
Mhm.
that even people who don't fit that criteria are going to notice you, and they could send you a message like, hey, I know you usually work with these people, but you've provided a lot of value. Would you work with me? And it's like, absolutely. Yeah, happy to do it.
Yeah, and I think that's and I presume that's a key one. Like we have a realtor who lives in our area, right? And she's been here for 30 years, I think. She's an expert on this area. That's all she does, this area.
Mhm.
And she always gets a higher price than anybody else.
Mhm. Yeah.
But she focuses exclusively on this area. She can go outside it.
Yeah, and that's a good point, John. So yeah, like that's one thing, is it's an area, and
Mhm,
becoming a champion for one area absolutely works. I think that's a
mhm.
great strategy. And it's interesting that in a certain area, generally you're going to get certain demographics, certain psychographics of people
Yeah.
that live in an area, and so
Mhm.
you can hone that in. And if you do it for long enough, like who's going to be a good fit and what the prices are, like you learn the shortcuts to all those things. So it can be that. It can also be strategies. I mean,
Mm.
I have clients who are 55 plus. They help people downsize.
Right,
I help people work with retirees. They work in kind of a nicer area. I have clients who are on TV, who are famous realtors actually,
right.
and they focus on their niche is a little different because they are a public figure, right? So there are a lot of things it can be, but the worst thing that you can be is everything to everyone, because
Mhm.
then you're nothing to anyone.
Yeah, yeah. No, and that's such a good point, and that goes for realtors, it goes for any business. To be honest, there is yet to be anything invented that is absolutely required for everyone. Maybe shoelaces, that's about it, but, um, um, but yeah, so what are some of the common mistakes you see realtors make, especially when they're starting out?
Yeah, yeah. I think that we have this epidemic that's hit us, which is just Instagram reels. The thing is that there's so much aesthetic, eye-catching, interesting stuff that we can see on things like Instagram and TikTok.
Mhm,
And so what I see a lot of realtors getting pulled into is, I want to be interesting and eye-catching. And that's kind of fine, but the problem is that it rarely has a message behind it. And so what I see is, and I always kind of categorize it as this, but I say, I'll never make you do TikTok dances, because doing the TikTok dances is catchy and it hits an algorithm and people see you. But the thing is that if let's just say you're in San Diego. Let's say
Yeah,
I'm in San Diego and I'm going to sell my house, and my house is worth $1.8 million. And I'm going to buy another house and it's going to be worth $2.1 million. The person that I'm going to pick is not going to be the person who does the best TikTok dance. It's going to
correct.
be the person who demonstrates their competence and that they are an expert in this area, or that they can help me in a way other people cannot. Right.
Yeah.
And so what I see a lot of realtors getting sucked into is thinking that being a real estate agent is a popularity contest. And the truth is that there's a kernel of truth in that. And
Mhm.
that's why people get sucked into it, is that if you're top of mind all the time, or if you're well connected in a community,
Yeah.
you're more likely to get business. And that's true. The thing that And so that's where they get caught up in it. But what I would say is that if you can do that in the right way, in demonstrating your competence instead of just being an entertainer, kind of being a comedian, a clown, I think that you set yourself up again for kind of a longer term success trajectory. You don't want to be doing TikTok dances for the rest of your life, right?
Yeah, yeah, and like you said, I mean, it's such an important decision, like selling, buying a house. It's a very emotional decision. It's all of these things that at the end of the day, you want somebody who you can trust, and you want somebody who's serious. I mean, who's serious about the process, right?
Right. And it's again, I always say it's not to say that we can't ever have
Sure.
lifestyle content. You have to have it,
Hmm.
but it can't be the bread and butter. I always use this analogy. I say it's like salt. You put a little salt on the meal, your meal isn't a pile of salt, right?
Hmm.
So it's good to sprinkle in something that is maybe lighthearted or funny, or hey, this is the best Mexican food spot in the city. That's great. I'd say do that once in a while, but it needs to be an accent, not the substance.
Yeah, no, I love that. I have a friend actually who's a former skateboard professional, right? A former pro skateboarder. He moved back to his hometown, Jacksonville, Florida. Neil, maybe you should check him out if you're in that area. Um, but what he does, like, very serious about it. He's a realtor now. He's very serious about it. But what he does, his little accent is, when he's selling a house, like he skateboards around the neighborhood, showing the neighborhood, highlighting all of those things. So it's kind of it's a nice add-on, but it's not a distraction, as you said.
Yeah. Well, and you got to realize like that's a great, I would say kudos to him. That's leveraging what he has. He is a
Hmm.
public figure.
Hmm.
He is someone who's established a reputation. And why completely dismiss that when a lot of people would be attracted? I mean, a lot of people are attracted to fame, right?
Hmm.
That's about identifying like, okay, do I want to work with people who would potentially be fans? Do I want to work with people who are, into skateboarding or maybe fit a certain demographic or psychographic? And if he wants to help those people, I mean, I think from the sounds of it, he's doing it right. But
Hmm.
again, most of us aren't professional skateboarders, right?
Yeah.
And so I would say that's why you sit down with someone like me and you have a personal brand strategy call and we figure out, okay, where are your strengths? What makes sense here? Who are you selling to? What are your goals and who is your ICP? And then we're going to make the content based on those things.
Yeah. And then talk to me a little bit about the type of content, because there's content and content, and we live in an era and a time now where just people are spitting out content nonstop. I mean, I said years ago to somebody, like, when everybody was writing, creating blogs and writing all this, I was saying, if everybody's creating, like, who's actually reading? And I feel like we're now in that with video and all of that kind of stuff. So what is what is a good content strategy as opposed to just a scattered one?
Yeah, yeah, great question. So once we've identified goals and we've gone over ICP, the next thing that I want to identify with a client is like, what is their USP? So their unique selling proposition. So we talked about that with the skateboarding thing. That's a great one. That lens that you have there is something that should be brought down into I call them your content pillars. So
Mhm.
they're basically the themes of the content that you're going to bring up. Now, one of the things I want to say to what you're talking about with like writing a blog or creating content in general, I always start my clients off in just organic content. Just we're gonna take some time to dial in the messaging,
Mhm.
because sometimes by creating the content, you can
Yeah.
get rid of the dross a bit, right? It takes some. You got to do it badly before you do it well, right?
Yeah.
So what I'll do with them is I'll say, okay, content pillar wise, we want to utilize your USP, right? So if it's skateboarding, one of the content pillars for your friend would be, and probably is, this skateboarding around the neighborhood. It's like a neighborhood analysis
Yeah.
but on a skateboard.
Mhm.
Great. That's a content pillar, and he could publish one every week.
Yeah.
And that would be one post every week. Makes sense. Fits his USP, speaks to his ICP, so his ideal client profile, and when he does it, if he addresses something that's important to that ICP
Yeah.
as he's doing it, right? So that's a good content pillar. He can reuse that, keep doing that. Okay. Then the next one, he'll pick another one. So let's say that people where he is at, something that's really important to them is that there aren't let's just say that there aren't like structural, the hurricane stuff. Let's use that
Yeah.
one.
Okay.
The
Mhm.
hurricane stuff is very important because he lives in a place where there's a lot of hurricanes. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not. But the point is that he'll talk about either hurricane prep or things that you should look for in a house to make sure that when a hurricane hits, you're not going to lose your whole property, right? If that was one of his ICP's chief concerns, then every week he should talk about a part of that. And you're going to attack that from so many different places, and you're going to leverage creativity there. But because we know it's a core concern, it's something we're going to come back to week after week. And then the final content pillar, and I start with 3, but I think 3 to 5 is usually good.
Mhm.
The last one I do is the rapport building content. So you talk a little bit about, here's the best burrito, look at my latte, but also things like, hey, my kid just had a piano recital.
Mhm.
People really need to feel like you're human and that
Yes.
you're relatable. So we can't say like, we're not going to be, buttoned up in a tie all the time, just talking business. We need those elements as well. There's another one that's great is, as you establish your expertise, share mistakes that you've made, things that have gone wrong. There's something called the pratfall effect, and it's this psychological mechanism where when we see someone who is really polished and doing really well, when they show us a mistake, it humanizes them and we like them more. It's like the flawed main character, right? We want to have them be a little bit flawed so we can identify with them.
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of that.
I think that's such I just want to underline that. I think that's such an important point, because we don't trust the person who comes off as completely polished, airbrushed, everything, all of that. You're right. We want to. It is great when we know, okay, they've learned their job just like we've learned ours, or whatever, and they've made their mistake, and I can learn from that, and I'm getting the benefit of that experience.
Right. Yep. Exactly. And we, like it or not, we like to work with people that we identify with.
Mhm.
Like we want to work with people who we feel they're like us in some way, and we're all flawed. And so that's a great ingredient to put into the mix. And then with that last content pillar is a little broad, but then I also like to talk about personal results. Like, hey, when I moved, here, this is what I learned, or when I bought my house, this is something that I wish I would have done. We have those. We have client results. So it's like, here's how I help my client, and testimonials, which people think like, hey, oh, that would be cheesy. It's not.
No.
Everybody wants to see testimonials. Everybody wants to see they're not the first person trying you out. They want to see you. They know what you're doing. Showing your work, show instead of tell. I'd say that's actually probably, you mentioned what are mistakes agents make. That's probably one of the number one mistakes I see people make, is they'll say, I'm a real estate agent that goes above and beyond.
Yeah.
Grow up. Above and beyond. Everybody says above and beyond.
What does that even mean?
Exactly. Precisely. So you need to say, no, I will come in and hire a cleaning company to clean your house. We will move you. We will hire a moving company to move you. We will negotiate. We'll do these 3 things in negotiation. You need to be exact. One of my favorite quotes is from George Well, and it's be more precise. So whenever you're in your marketing and your personal branding, and especially as you're talking about results or offers, be exact, be precise.
Yeah, because let's face it, if you're in a competitive market, there's a lot of realtors are doing, as you said, extra things. So you have to kind of stay on top of that too, right? To make sure that you're number one, you're obviously communicating the value of working with you and why you should work with you, but also be cognizant of what other people are doing.
Right. And that's why I don't understand how real estate agents feel like they have the time to do TikTok dances. I think another thing that's interesting about anything, but in real estate, it's definitely this way, that there's so much that agents do, but because they never talk about it, by virtue of you explaining that you do what every other real estate agent does, but you talk about the steps of it, people are going to think, oh, wow, he's doing or she's doing so much more than other agents, because all the other agents are just doing TikTok dances. And you're saying, hey, let me talk to you about how I help you through title, and what title means, and how I'm going to make sure that you're covered and you don't find 3 years later that you don't actually own your house. Like, here are the things that I'll walk you through. You need to do those things. Now, again, there's always got to be a mix, but I think that's a very important piece.
Yeah, no, no, absolutely. And then obviously the final thing is you need to have very good communication, right? You need to be able, and the thing is nowadays, I mean, and I'd love to ask you about this, is like there's so many different ways of communicating, and people like communication in different ways that you have to be prepared to meet to make sure you communicate with your client the way they want to be communicated
Yeah. So I'm a big copywriting junkie. I
with.
love copywriting. Like that's a big thing for me. And yeah, so one of the things I'll do is I'll sit down with my clients, and the way we dial in that language, you're talking about communication.
Yeah,
The person who's going to do the best is the person who, when they speak, their ICP is like, how do they know what I'm thinking? How are
right.
they in my head right now? You enter the conversations happening in the minds of your clients. And the way you do that is you take the time to think it through. And they're called PQR2s. There's a guy named Jim Edwards. He wrote a book called Copywriting Secrets. It's like
Mhm,
a kind of a standard in the industry, but he talks about PQR2. So there's problems, questions, roadblocks, and desired results. So after you've identified your ICP, you need to sit down and you don't do like 3 or 4 problems they have. You need to do like 14 or 15,
mhm.
because you get to the good stuff right at the end, right as you've thought about it for a while. So what are all of their problems, and you brainstorm them, and by the end of that you've got 15 problems, 15 questions, 15 roadblocks, 15 desired results. You have the language that they're using in their heads. And then if you want to go a step above that, you start looking into the parables or the analogies they use. How do they think? What's the world they live in? And
Mhm.
then when you start speaking that way and writing that way, you are the only person people will work with, because they appreciate that you've taken the time to understand them. They wouldn't think that explicitly, but implicitly, that's what the case is.
Yeah, and all the research shows you that it's quite simple with people. They want to be seen, heard, and understood.
Yep. Yep. And they need to know, like, and trust you.
Yep.
So that overlap right there, I mean, that's it.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Well, listen, thanks so much, Nathan. This has been fascinating, great stuff. All of Nathan's information will be below this video. But before we go, please do remind people about what you do.
Yeah, so I do personal branding for real estate professionals, real estate agents, hard money lenders, syndicators, capital raisers,
Mhm.
and you can find me on LinkedIn or Facebook.
Excellent. I would encourage you to do that. As we said at the very beginning, it's not like there is too few realtors out there. There's a lot of realtors in the business, and there's a lot more coming in. There always is. So make sure that you give yourself all the advantage. Go check out what Nathan does, and make sure you get your branding right, and perhaps stay off of TikTok. Thanks, Nathan, and thank you for watching and listening.
Thanks, John.